Thank you for joining For Our Special Kids, where we openly and honestly discuss the magic and the mess of raising a child with special needs. We are thrilled to have you here and hope this time provides you with some wonder and wisdom. I'm your host, Jennifer Lansing. Let's get started. Hello, I am back from the Bahamas, and it was amazing and incredible, and there will be an episode about that coming up soon, but it was a doozy of a day getting back. It took us like 3 days. But I had talked with Susan G., who had been on the program before, about an episode that we both listened to on psychic teachers, and it was called Is It Your Intuition or Your Imagination? It posted on April 10th, 2023. I highly recommend going and checking it out before we dive in if you have time. They go into a little bit more detail. Our focus is very much on how can a mama or a caregiver of a medically challenged or complex child or disabled child figure out when am I hearing from my intuition and when do I need to act versus am I just freaking out? Is this just my imagination? And so we really focus on what we do as parents in this episode. I do want to give a shout out. Susan and I are doing a retreat in September. So next month for mamas of medically complex or disabled children, there is still 1 or 2 openings because those medical mamas had a couple issues that were already signed up and they had to change their plans. So we do have a couple of openings there. If you have any interest in joining us, please reach out to me at jen@ForOurSpecialKids, or you can go to the apricityhopeproject.org and there's all the information on that. Thank you, Susan, for saving my tushy wushy because we had to do this recording really, really fast. There are a few editing issues and some sound quality issues, but you know what? You're getting your podcast on Monday. I hope you have a wonderful day. I hope you enjoy our content. I hope it inspires you. Please let me know what you think. I am with Susan G. for the fastest recording that we're not going to edit. She is joining us again, medical mama, Apricity Hope Project founder and amazing woman, also the podcast hostess of When Autumn Comes. Susan's been on before. Please go check out some of her other conversations with us. She's saving my life because all hell broke loose and getting me out of the Bahamas and I missed some things. And anywho's, we are going to talk about imagination versus intuition. And we're going to get into what that is. But I know that Susan also wants to add a layer in there of trauma. So talk to me about that first, and then we'll go through our definition of what intuition is after that. Why is trauma influential in your conversation here?
Thank you for having me back again. And I'm glad I can save your ass again.
Thank you.
So when I was preparing for this episode, I was kind of taking notes about imagination versus intuition. And for me, I kind of went back and forth about imagination plus or minus anxiety. I have had a lot of trauma in my experience as a medical mom. I have 2 children with mitochondrial disease. My daughter passed 2 years and 1 month ago. Can you believe it has been 2 years?
No.
So Lorelai, her whole entire life was trauma. Benji is 4 and he has the same mitochondrial disease that she had. So same life expectancy and a lot of trauma. The last 7.5 years for me has just been a bucket of trauma. So when you were asking me about imagination versus intuition, I was kind of thinking like, where does my PTSD come into play with this? Because I'm in trauma therapy right now and I'm sorting through like that feeling of, oh my gosh, this is going to happen. And I know you weren't really prepared for the anxiety part of this conversation, but for me, it kind of just piles up. And something I've struggled with is trying to decipher, is my PTSD, is my anxiety? There's a dog walking behind me now.
I know. I actually thought it was a ghost at first. I was like, no, you've got a ghost doodle in your...
Is my anxiety, is that coming from intuition or is that coming from like my imagination and past traumas?
Right. And so that's getting into your decipherability. So you're wondering how much is this anxiety influencing this? Yeah. And how does it influence then the actions that you take? And you were mentioning the whole toaster fire, house burning down, or is it just toast? Tell me about that.
Yeah. So for me, I feel a lot of things, but I kind of just know things. One of the things that happened with Lorelai is she had a lot of autonomic storming. And the doctors at CHOP said that when she has her autonomic storming, meaning like her whole body's just going haywire, in Lorelai's brain, she has burnt toast in her toaster, but her brain thinks her entire house is on fire. And so for me, I've kind of related that to navigating my anxiety. Is this burnt toast or is my house on fire?
Right.
Benji has a 99.2 temp. And in my brain, I'm going, we need to pack. We're going to the PICU. We're doing all the things. There's no like step by step. And so instead of like taking that moment back to sit and question my intuition, my imagination and my anxiety already have me in the PICU because
Right.
my imagination is telling me your house is on fire, flip into medical mom mode and go. And I think that I trust my imagination yells louder, if that makes sense.
Yes, you just cut out there. You trust your intuition, but your imagination yells louder.
Yes.
Okay. As you're talking, I'm like, oh boy, how do you decipher this? Because you never want to look back and say, well, I thought it was intuition, but then I really thought it was imagination, so I didn't do anything because I analyzed it too much.
Yeah.
So, okay, let's talk about the definition, or at least my definition of intuition. So I believe it's basically when the universe or spirit guides or your angels or your guardian, whomever, they're giving you messages. They're kind of like putting you in their hands and they're being like, hello, Susan G, we're going to help you right now. And they're just helping you and they're giving you a message. And so they speak to us through our clairs or signs or symbols or numbers. But I want to talk about the clairs because I think the clairs are really how I equate, or what I equate intuition to. So quickly, you've got clairsentience. It's your third chakra. It's your gut feeling when you walk into a room. Ooh, I don't like this feeling. Or like the first time I met you, ooh, I'm going to be friends with Susan. I mean, it just was, that's what we're going to do. My gut told me. Then you have clairaudience, which is your fifth chakra, represented by blue. Your third is yellow. Your fifth chakra is clairaudience, where you might wake up with a song in your head. You actually might hear voices. You might wake up with someone saying your name. You might hear Lorelai talking to you as you're coming out of a dream. You might hear a ringing in your ears. And that can be a way. So now when I hear a ringing in my ear and I'll say, oh, I'm listening. And I don't hear a message, but I might know that there's a download of information coming. At some point,
to pay attention.
Yeah, sometime I'm going to get, at some point, maybe today or in a next meditation, I'm going to get something. I mentioned that I hear things telepathically from the dolphins. So that's clairaudience. Then you've got your clairvoyance, which is right. It's your third eye. It's kind of in between your brows, kind of on your forehead. And that's when you see things. Now, I see things in meditation or when I do a shamanic journey. Other people literally see things. So they might see flickering lights. They might see a movement off on their left side or their right side. And they're like, what's it? What? Every now and then I'll see that and I try to acknowledge it because it doesn't happen very often to me. But a lot of people do see it. Like if you're looking at me and you see like an aura behind me or around me, that's going to be how your guides are trying to tell you something. And then the fourth one is your claircognizance, which you mentioned. You feel things and you know things. I'm very much that way as well. So claircognizance is when you know something, and it's really hard to trust because how do you just know? But it's just that. It's like when I get a text from someone and they're like, hi, Jen. Well, what's wrong? I just know. And that happened the other day. I'm like, what's wrong? And she's like, my boyfriend just broke up with me. How did you know? I'm like, I just knew. Or when someone walks in the door and I can already tell how they're feeling, like I just know. Ooh, I just know. So that's when you know to call someone. That's when you know you're going to see someone at the store. That's when you think about somebody and they call you 10 minutes later and you're like, what? You can create those things. So that's how I kind of define intuition. And I'm actually creating a little course on that because I think it's really important for people to understand how they can enhance that in their world and what they can do to use that to be a better parent. That's a whole nother story. So I know. So that's the clair. Those are the clairs. And I believe that the trickiest part is what you exactly said is how do you know when it's a clair speaking with you or it's just
when you're daydreaming and you're thinking about all the things that could happen, or something happens and you immediately go down the road of every time Benji gets a fever, it's not my imagination, we're going, but then you don't, like you said, you don't slow down and just tap in. Like, okay, is this Benji's body healing itself? Where does that feel right now? If I were to take this energy of the fever and take it into my third chakra and feel it, be like, okay, how does this feel? And you sit with it. And then you move it up. This is actually, I'm going to take a course about how you work through trauma by moving things up your chakra system. And you move it up and you feel it. Okay, we're in my fifth. Like, how does it sound to me? Like, if I say out loud, okay, this is an emergency. Like, how does that sound? Does that feel right? Or does that feel like, no, Susan, you're being a little extreme right now? Okay, then move it up into what do you see happening? Can I see us going to the PICU right now? Or can I see us staying here and relaxing through this and waiting a little bit? What do I know to be true? What feels right in terms of knowing, and you work it up through there. And that might only take 3 minutes to do that, but it might give you a little bit better. Okay, this is my intuition telling me we need to go in.
And for me, I, through my trauma therapy, have realized, so my therapist has told me that I have managers, internal managers, and then I have my core self. And I have realized it's been a game changer in my therapy, because I feel like my managers are running around. For the record, I was a wedding planner before Lorelai. So my managers are all wedding planners with the little headpieces and clipboards.
Now these are energetic managers.
They don't stop. And I've had to lock them in their offices before, which I sound like a crazy person right now, but like, I have to simmer my managers and I have to go, what does my true self feel? Because that kind of, if I quiet my internal crazy,
yes,
then I can like talk to my intuition. I can ask my gut, what are you feeling? What are you knowing? And so calming my managers and their clipboards, taking their clipboards away, and then they go crazy when you take their clipboards away.
Sure.
They're control freaks, if you haven't figured that one out yet.
Your energetic managers are crazy.
But they have to be, because they're trying to protect me from the trauma that I have been through for the last 7.5 years. And like, I can't fault them. I just need them to like tone it down a bit.
Yeah. Or give you an actual checklist.
Yeah.
Instead of all of them giving you a checklist, being like, all right, peeps, like, let's just make one checklist here. What feels right? What's the next logical step? What's the next step? What's the next step? That might be a way for you to give them some power, but not let them take over.
Well, and the other thing that I have in my notes here, for me, I feel like intuition comes from love. It comes in love and it comes in facts. It's very simple when I get like intuitive hits. It's like, here's what it is. You are loved. This is out of love. Whereas my imagination can often be fear and loud and shouty. And that's where the whole your house is on fire thing is oftentimes my imagination. And I need to like simmer my managers, call the firemen, realize that it's just toast, and kind of sit back and let that intuitive message of love say, this is what you need to do.
Yes.
It's really hard though when you have a terminally ill child.
All right. It's completely different. It's not just hard, Susan. It's a completely different struggle. So
when you have a terminally ill child and you've already lost one, like
then you're on top of you're on top of a mountain of challenges.
My managers are now wedding planners and firemen. So
yes, they are. They're multitasking their shit out of themselves. Okay. So your level of discernment has to be different than mine. However, I'll give you, okay, let me back up for a second. So it comes from love and it's clear. And Samantha and Deb really did talk about that as well in the Psychic Teachers podcast, is when you get an intuitive hit, which I call, or you know something, it is clear. It's not yabba dabba doo, yabba. It's not. It's like, this is your message. I think that's important to talk about, and maybe just separating that from right there. If that's the only thing you take away from this conversation is if it's all clogged up in crazy shit emotion and a lot of anxiety and whatever, it might be imagination. It might not, but it might be imagination. If it's very clear, if it's calm, if it's supportive, if it's loving, I believe that intuition also has an active other party. And what I mean by that is it's coming from something. It's coming from outside. So it might not even be something that you would think about. It might be a totally new thought that you're like, whoa, where did that come from? That is more of an intuitive concept. But I also believe that teal gives me intuitive knowing. So I'll give you an example. I was down at my mother-in-law's. Teal was eating, and she was eating something that I know is tricky for her. Cantaloupe. It's just a tricky food for her to eat. It's slippery. It doesn't chew real well, and it can slide in, even if it's a small piece. So I had said to Alex, hey, I'm doing laundry over here. I was just a room away. I'm doing laundry over here. Can you just watch her? He's like, yeah. And as happens with parents, you say, yeah. And then something pulls you away and your child is still sitting there eating the cantaloupe. So Alex got pulled away to something. I'm doing laundry, head's like in the laundry. The water's running. Like I can't hear anything. I'm trying to, where's the turtle? It's not my own stuff. Right. And all of a sudden I know my daughter's choking. I knew there was no sound because that's the worst part. Right. There was no sound. And to make this worse, there were 3 adults in the room, but no one was really paying attention to her. And I casually look up and I see Teal beaming a message at me. And she's got this little panic in her eyes. And she is telling me, Mom, Mom, Mom. Boom. I walked over, smacked her, put my finger down her throat, cleared it, got it out. She was like, ugh. Now, could she have gotten it out? Perhaps. But she was nodding on my intuition at that point. She was saying, dude, I'm not effing kidding. You need to look at me. And so I think that's where the messages are very clear. There was not, oh, I wonder if I'm just imagining that. It was like, boom.
It wasn't like that. And I don't know if you get this, but when I'm in the shower, I hear like phantom crying from my kid. Like, so like, it's not like that where you're like, is Benji
I stick
crying?
my head out. I'm like am I here?
Yeah, exactly. No. So,
okay.
but
I hear phantom
it
crying all the
wasn't
time.
questioned. It was this, I need to go check. And
now
I feel like when you get a message or a download like that, who cares if you're wrong? If you have that gut feeling, you need to go over there.
Exactly.
Whether your managers and your internal dialogue are going nuts, but if you have that feeling of something is telling me that I have to do this, you need to do it. I had one of the things that you had written about talking about was a time when we kind of dismissed our intuition. And I hate
this question, by the way, because I have a big old horrible story about that. Go ahead.
Hold my beer. Lorelai was in the NICU. She was 9 weeks old. She had just gotten her G-tube placed. It was the first night in 9 weeks that I was not there. And I was at home and I felt like I needed to be there. I was pumping. I was, this was the first night in 9 weeks that I had not been there. And I remember saying to my husband, like, I just feel like I need to be there. I just feel like I need to be there. And he's like, you're exhausted. Like you need to be home, which any mom who had been at a NICU for 9 weeks, I was there all that day because she had surgery.
Yeah.
But it was a different feeling of I need to be there and not as much like I need to be there to just sit with her. It was just like, I need to be there. Within 30 minutes of my husband saying, just go to bed. Like I remember we had just moved into our house. There was no clutter in the house because we literally just moved in. And I remember sitting in my very empty room and my phone ringing, and it wasn't even our attending. it was the attending at the time saying, Miss Gagan, there's been an incident.
Yeah.
And someone messed up and fractured Lorelai's femur. And it was the first time that I was like, okay, so this mom instinct thing,
Yeah.
like
I knew.
this mom intuition is a thing, huh?
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, like someone hurt my baby.
Mm-hmm.
And I think with that too, preparing for this conversation that you and I are having, I Googled a little bit and there's science behind, because you are very much into the intuitive thing. And I try to keep like one foot in the science and one foot in the woo woo.
Yes.
And there's science that's showing that the moms are now having DNA from their children in their brains. And how does all of this connect? And like, 9 weeks into being a mom, and I'm like, somebody is in pain. Like she's in pain. I need to be there.
Yeah. And those are horrible moments when you don't respond to it.
Again, buckets of trauma here.
I know. Buckets of trauma.
Great fun.
Yeah, great fun. Such a great concept of the call today. Well done, Susan. Thanks for presenting this one as an option.
Sorry.
No, mine, Tia was born on July 12th, and on July 11th, I was laying in bed and I knew something was wrong. I knew. We had an appointment scheduled for the next day. When they say 10 kicks or movements in an hour or whatever it is, or 10 and 10, I can't remember what it is. God,
I have no idea. I didn't get that far.
So I was counting, and normally Teal hit the marker within like 30 seconds. I mean, that kid was like, boom, boom, boom. And I'm like, all right, we're good in there and going to sleep now. And I laid down and she wasn't as active. And she just wasn't as active. And I thought, it's very interesting. Okay. And I mentioned it to Alex, and he said, hold on. But they said this rule, did she make it? And I said, yeah, she like slid into home plate at like ninth inning, 2 people are out, like barely made it. And I said, that's not typical for her. And he's like, yeah, but it was okay. And I'm like, all right, we're going to go see the doctor tomorrow. I should have gone in right at that moment. Found out that her cord was wrapped around her neck twice. And so she was telling me, I'm slowing down, Mom.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what? Fuck.
Yeah.
That's when you just step back and go, okay, I knew even before she was born, I had my intuitive connection with her. And so I'm not to be like, wah, wah, Debbie Downer. I mean, because I love who we got as Teal. Like for whatever reason, I got Teal the way she wasn't supposed to come out then. If she was, then I would have gone to the hospital. I got Teal the way Teal is, and she's perfectly perfect to me. However, now that she's here, I definitely am far more connected to that knowing or that feeling, or I'm just going to pick up the phone and call the hospital. You don't have to get in the car and go, but you can call and be like, hey, everything okay with little Doodle here?
Yeah.
Should I come in?
Yeah. Because in my case, Lorelai laid there for 4 hours with a broken femur. It was the first night I hadn't been there, and she laid there for 4 hours with a broken leg. Had I been there, could I have relieved some of her pain? Right. I mean, it wouldn't have changed her story at all, but like, could I have popped back up and been like, hey, something's not right.
Right.
Just to relieve some of her pain.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's where here I am 7.5 years later. And that was just a tip of the iceberg as far as my trauma goes. But from the beginning, for me, it's always been, is this your imagination? Is this your anxiety? Like spoiling into your imagination? Or like, really, do you really know something's wrong right now?
Mm-hmm. And I would imagine most people that are listening right now, if you really slow down and pause, 90% of the time, at least, it's actually your intuition. I think we know when it's our imagination. I know when I am going down the road of crazy. Like, I know when I'm getting amped up about something, or overly anxious or overly responsive, or boom, like my patients, like, I know when it's my imagination.
Mm-hmm.
And then there are times, most of the time, if I slow down and I'm like, yep, that was a clear message.
I think the key is slowing down. And I think in my case with the PTSD, it is really hard to slow down. And I've talked to you about meditating before, and all of my woo-woo friends are always like, Susan, you need to meditate. You need to slow down. And it is a message that has been repeated over and over for me, especially this year. Again, I think as a medical caregiver who lives a life of hypervigilance,
Yes.
it is really hard to tap into that when your hypervigilance is screaming at you all the time.
I did an interview with Tanya a couple of weeks ago, and she was very clear about how the trauma sneaks up on you too. So you might be having a great day and then trauma sneaks up, and she said, that's why I don't slow down, because I don't like things sneaking up on me. I don't like, if I slow down, then all of a sudden I'm like, boom, a bomb goes off and my emotion comes through and my grief comes through. She's like, I keep going because it's just easier.
Yeah.
And that's the tricky part, right? You got to find that balance of, I'm supporting me. I'm slowing down to support me so that I can be a better mom.
I have found that if there's moms listening who are like, oh my gosh, that's me, I can't slow down. I have found that for me, setting a 3-minute timer, I got these really cool, I can't think of what they're called, really cool like sound things. They sound like sound baths that you hold in your hands and they talk to each other.
Ooh.
And they only last 3 minutes. So I know when I turn them on, I am only having to turn off my hypervigilance for the 3 minutes.
That's
and
brilliant.
It helps me because it calms me down. And I know that like I can do anything for 3 minutes. And I feel like after I do that, that's when I can go, is that my imagination or is that my intuition?
Such a good conversation. Thank you.
I still suck at meditating though.
It's okay. 3 minutes is better than 0 minutes.
Right? Exactly.
3 minutes is better than 2.5.
That
right?
it is. Yeah.
I mean, it's something where I think we need to be gentle with ourselves.
Yeah.
If I can set an insight timer, which I highly recommend insight timer, if I can set it for, if I only have 3 minutes or 5 minutes to just deep breathe, and then I giggle because like 30 seconds in, my brain's going, I'm like, okay, you lasted 30 seconds. Okay, let's try again. Let's breathe for 30 seconds and see, right? Okay, 5 minutes, 3 minutes, just start there.
I think we should do a follow-up episode on meditating for the crazy medical mom. Can we do that?
Yeah.
Like you can teach me all the things and I can talk about how my brain goes crazy and I have managers that are running everywhere.
I can't teach you all the things, but I can talk with you about certain things.
Okay.
Okay.
We'll do a rain check on that one.
We will. Have a wonderful Sunday. Thanks for saving my butt.
Thanks for being patient with my timeline.
Love you.
Thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you found 1 or 2 meaningful nuggets of information to make your day better. If you think there's value in what we do, please take a moment to tell another friend, family member, or a caregiver. We'd love to hear from you at forourspecialkids@gmail.com. You can send in a question, a comment, a topic that you'd like to learn more about, or if you'd like us to highlight a certain person, please send that information to us. It makes our show so much better and so much more valuable for you. Our Facebook and Instagram handle is For Our Special Kids. And finally, remember to witness the wonder and the wisdom within yourself and others. Until next time.